I'm going to say a word, and I want you to notice your own reaction when I say it. Socialism. Did you feel it? Some of you tensed up, some of you checked out, and some of you are already scrolling down through the comment section. That reaction, that is the product. That reaction was bought, manufactured, packaged, and delivered to you over decades by people who need you to stop thinking the moment you hear that word. Because if you stop thinking, you stop asking questions. And if you stop asking questions, people picking your pockets while you're distracted never have to answer for it. I'm Blake. This is The Speakeasy. Straight talk, no chaser. And today we're going to talk about what socialism actually means in the United States and how it's been weaponized to prevent what is, and how it's costing you, all of us. It's already here. Here's a thought experiment. The next time someone spits the word socialist at a policy proposal, ask them to name the last federal program they used. Chances are they drove to work on a federally funded highway. They picked up a prescription covered by Medicare Part D. They checked the weather on their phones, data generated by NOAA satellites that you and I paid for. The FDA inspected the food they ate for breakfast. The FAA made sure airplanes didn't drop out of the sky into their house. Their kids went to public school. Their grandparents got Social Security checks. All of it paid for by a collective taxation administered by the government for the public benefit. By the strictest definition being deployed on cable news every single night, that is socialism. Which means one of two things is true. Either every road, every food inspection, every weather forecast, every Medicare prescription needs to go, or the word has been surgically hollowed out of meaning and refilled with fear. Spoiler, it's the second one. Nobody is proposing the United States become the former Soviet Union. Nobody's serious. What we're talking about is what we've always been talking about, is a country that has public programs, already funds collective infrastructure, already uses taxpayer money to take care of the things that markets won't or profit unfairly from. We've been doing it since 1789. The debate isn't socialism versus freedom. The debate is who do these programs serve and who pays for them. And the moment you reframe it in that way, the S word stops working, which is exactly why they keep throwing it out. During the Biden administration, Republicans told us that this country was going in the wrong direction. And I want you to hold on to that phrase, wrong direction, because it gets recycled every single election year. It doesn't matter the economy is doing. It doesn't matter what the numbers say. Wrong direction. It is an economic assessment. It's a brand. It's a feeling they're selling you so you don't look at the actual receipts. So let's look at the receipts. The stock market had rebounded. Retirement accounts had recovered. Everything people lost had been regained. Unemployment was down. The number of Americans with health care coverage was up meaningfully. And with expanded access to contraception, which comes something that the pro-life crowd never wants to talk about, a statistical significant decline in abortions. That's not opinion, that's math. Fewer unintended pregnancies, fewer abortions. If you actually care about the outcome rather than the culture war performance, that should matter. And then Dodd-Frank. The laws passed after 2008 to hold banks accountable for the predatory lending that crashed the economy. Most people don't know. It was gutted. While they were busy watching the president's Twitter feed, financial protections were quietly disappeared. Then it occurred to me. Though occurred isn't really the right word, because I've known it all along. For a certain segment of the Republican coalition, it was never actually about the economy. The economy is the alibi. Racism, misogyny, anti-immigration, bigotry are all the crimes, and the 1% is handing down the sentencing guidelines. While you were watching the outrage of the week, while the feeds were full of whoever they told you to be angry at, your financial protections were being stripped quietly, deliberately, and distraction was the point. Here is what the S-word propaganda machine actually accomplishes. It prevents us from having a single unified conversation about affordability. Because when you look honestly at homelessness, healthcare, higher education, and abortion, those aren't four separate issues. They are four symptoms of one disease. An uninsured pregnant woman who can't afford prenatal care, can't take time off work, can't afford childcare after delivery, she doesn't need a lecture about the sanctity of life. She needs a system that doesn't make every single choice a financial catastrophe. A student who graduates with debt equivalent to a mortgage on a house they can no longer afford isn't lazy. They followed every rule they were told to follow, and the game changed on them mid-play. A worker making $16 an hour in a city where the average one-bedroom apartment costs $2,200 a month. That's not somebody making a bad choice. That's somebody who's being failed by a wage structure that hasn't kept pace with the cost of living in 4 decades. 771,000 Americans were unhoused in 2024, the highest number recorded. And here's the part that should make you sit down and take note. More than half of the people homeless in shelters were employed, working jobs, sometimes 2, and still could not cover rent. The working homeless are not a paradox. They are a logical conclusion of an economy that has severed the connection between labor and shelter. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 an hour since 2009. 17 years. The cost of a one-bedroom apartment has roughly doubled in that time. Groceries, childcare, healthcare, utilities, all up. The wage floor, frozen. When Republicans are asked about raising the minimum wage, the response is a shrug, a talking point about small business, which would carry a lot more weight if the largest employers were paying minimum wage weren't Walmart, Amazon, McDonald's, and corporations booking tens of billions of dollars in annual profits. The shrug isn't arrogance, it's a policy position. They have decided they don't care about how low it goes. Now, here's the part that should make your blood boil. But somehow it never makes the nightly news. Those corporations, the ones that are paying wages so low their employees can't afford rent, have a standard practice on an employee's first day right alongside the W-4 and the direct deposit form. They hand out information on how to apply for SNAP, for Medicaid, and for housing assistance. They have systematized it. They have operationalized the transfer of their payroll obligations onto the American taxpayer. This is what's called corporate welfare. One study put the annual cost of taxpayers at roughly $153 billion, subsidizing billion-dollar profit margins because the wage floor is too low to cover basic survival. But we're not talking about that. We're being told to feel contempt for the person in the checkout line. I want you to picture this. A parent, probably employed, probably exhausted, standing at the register, counting out a handful of change, doing the math in their heads that no parent should have to do, weighing whether to put back the baby formula or a pound of hamburger because the EBT balance won't cover both. And the political machinery that manufactured their poverty has trained enough of us to look at that moment with suspicion rather than solidarity. They want you angry at the parent. They want you demanding drug tests for food stamps while never once proposing we claw back the $153 billion subsidy from companies that are already booking record profits from government supplemented labor. That's not a coincidence. That's a con. If you want to understand how government can fail its most vulnerable citizens while simultaneously being called a bloated socialist monolith, study the Social Security disability system. A person works their entire life, pays into the system on every paycheck, pays for 30 years. Their body breaks down. They can no longer work. And then they are required to hire an attorney to sue the government they funded just to access the benefits they already earned. This is not a hypothetical. This is the standard practice. In fiscal 2023, over 133,000 Americans died with their disability claims still pending. Not denied, pending. Still in queue, still waiting. The average wait for an initial determination, 231 days. And that's before any appeal. The full process with initial application, reconsideration, hearings before an administrative law judge can take 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years of no income, no health care, no certainty for people whose bodies have already taken them out of the workforce. The suicide rates among disabled applicants facing homelessness and years-long waits aren't even tracked systematically, which tells you everything about where the political priority is. And while the backlog hit an all-time high, the SSA workforce was cut 7,000 employees last year. When you defund agencies processing the claims, people wait longer. When you wait longer, they lose housing. They lose their health care. Some of them lose their lives. Small government has a body count. It just never makes the nightly news. The fix isn't radical. It's money, it's staff, and the political will to say that people who paid in deserves to be paid out promptly, with dignity, without a lawyer. Here's what we collectively need to understand. These are not unsolvable problems. They are unsolvable by design. Social Security is not going broke. It's being starved. The solvency gap is entirely fixable, not by cutting benefits, not by raising the retirement age for people who work with their bodies until their bodies give out, but by lifting the payroll tax cap. Right now, a worker making $40,000 a year pays Social Security tax on every single dollar. A hedge fund manager making $40 million a year pays the first $168,000 and not a cent more. Fix that, and we have the solvency problem largely disappearing. It's not complicated math, it's a political choice not to ask wealthy people to pay the same rate as everyone else. Healthcare, we spend more per capita than any other country by a wide margin, and we produce worse outcomes than most developed nations and every other wealthy country that covers its citizens through some form of the universal system, and not one of them would trade for ours. The difference isn't quality of medicine. The difference is administrative overhead, pharmaceutical pricing, and the cost of profit extraction at every single point in the chain. Higher education? No tuition at public universities in Germany. Finland, Norway, Denmark, free or nearly free. These aren't socialist dystopias. They are economic competitors who understands that educated workforce is a national asset, not a personal luxury you finance with 30 years of debt. Meanwhile, we're losing highly skilled jobs to workers from countries that pay for their education and lecturing our own kids about the bootstraps while handing them an $80,000 a year loan and calling it opportunity. None of these get solved without the ultra wealthy paying their fair share, not because of ideology, because of arithmetic. We know what happens when wealthy write the tax codes. 4 decades of supply-side economics. The most dramatic wealth inequality in American history. Rising child poverty, rising homeless children, working class communities, and political vocabulary that trained us to blame immigrants, transgender teenagers, and gay couples for all of it. If you tell me you care about the economy, if you tell me you care about education, if you tell me you care about the lives of children, I'm going to ask you to look honestly at the record, not the rhetoric, the record. Because the question worth sitting with is who benefits when you're angry at the LGBTQ community instead of pharmaceutical pricing? Who benefits when the debate is about what bathroom someone uses instead of why someone working 2 jobs can't afford a 1-bedroom apartment? Who benefits when the word socialist ends every conversation before it begins? The answer is the people pointing the fingers, because billionaires taking billion-dollar tax deductions while their lobbyists write the tax code, the donor class funding campaigns of people who will never solve the problem that keep their donors powerful, because solved problems don't write checks. I'm going to go out on a limb here. But if billionaires and record profit corporations had billions to spend on lobbyists and political campaigns, they have at least that amount to pay in taxes. These problems are solvable, every single one of them. The only thing standing between us and solutions is the decisions to make these conversations instead of who deserves to be in America, how someone chooses to live their life, or what bathroom they use. Don't let the word socialism work on you anymore. You're smarter than that. We are smarter than that. I'm Blake. This is The Speakeasy. Straight talk, no chaser. Read the full article in the link in the description. Share this with somebody in your life that needs to hear it. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.